What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian MMA podcast. My name is John, and I am your host, and we are back with another week of UFC, the 6th week in a row of UFC. We have 9 straight UFC events going on, and this week we are in Wichita, Kansas for the UFC on ESPN Plus 4 card, headlined by Junior Dos Santos versus Derek Lewis. At the end of the program, we will be recapping the UFC 235 pay-per-view that went down this past Saturday night, headlined by John Jones versus Anthony Smith. But starting things off this week, we are going to be analyzing, predicting, and discussing the betting odds on each and every of the UFC's 13 fights going down this weekend in Wichita, Kansas. So let's start things off in the lightweight division. We have Alex White, who is 12-5, taking on Dan Moret, who is 13-4. The betting line opened up for this one, Alex White as the -175 favorite to Dan Moret at +135. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook, 5dimes.eu, right now we see Alex White -140, Dan Moret +120. So line margins tightening up. I definitely agree with the line movement in this one. I think that setting Alex White that high of a favorite is a little bit crazy, honestly, especially after his last fight. Was a fight that he was around that same price, -150, -175, and he took on veteran Jim Miller in that fight. I don't know what it was. Miller could have been on that night, or White could have been off. It just didn't seem like he really respected Jim Miller in there. Got caught with a combo early. It rocked him really bad. And then after that, Jim Miller was just able to take the back and get the choke on Alex White, finishing that fight up in about 90 seconds time. So Alex White definitely has his holes in his striking defense. His submission defense and his takedown defense is not very great. He was a little bit hard to take down against James Krause. Actually, I watched their fight pretty recently. He was a little bit difficult to get taken down. But once he was on the mat, he was actually, looked very uncomfortable in there. It turns out he's only a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. So that's, pretty low level for this level of MMA. He's got, some decent striking. He throws a lot of power. He kind of wings punches, though, and he's not very technical on the feet. So he's taking on Dan Moret, who has a really great amateur career. He's actually 14-0 as an amateur. So I actually hold that in pretty high regard. It not only shows that the guy has a ton of experience, but he also has a lot of IQ about him. The fact that he wants to rack up that amateur experience before going pro, which a lot of guys don't really utilize. But I think Dan Moret really shines on the ground. He's got nice back takes. He's got nice submissions. Unfortunately he fought Gilbert Burns in his first UFC fight. And it was that's a tough task, but he actually looked pretty game in that fight. He hurt Burns on the feet for a while, but he kind of rushed in the second he hurt him with no composure and just got taken down by Burns, who was a world-class grappler of his own. But then the fight in the second round went back to the feet, and then Burns just viciously KO'd Dan Moret with a combination of punches against the cage. So Gilbert Burns isn't really known for being a striker, but he was still able to knock out Moret in this one. But so, if White wins this fight, I think it'll probably be by testing that chin of Moret on the feet, or possibly winning a decision, a sloppy striking fest. If Moret wins this fight, I think that he will take Alex White down, and at some point sync up a submission, maybe win a decision, with winning rounds on top. Honestly, I'm going to favor the underdog in this one, in Dan Moret. His opening line was really good, and honestly, right now, +120 is not too bad. I just couldn't trust a dime on Alex White as a favorite. So the pick is going to be Dan Moret to get this one done by submission. Next fight in the welterweight division, we have Alex Morono, who is 15-5, taking on Zach Otto, who is 17-6. The opening betting line for this one was Alex Morono as the favorite at -190, Zach Otto at +150. Looking over at 5dimes.eu, we see Morono -170, Zach Otto at +150. So again, line margins tightening up in this one. There's definitely two-way action coming in this fight. It's definitely a close matchup. We saw Zach Otto in his last fight win a split decision over Dwight Grant. A pretty questionable decision, if I'm being honest. He's just got so low output, and his striking is just so mediocre. I just can't believe he won that fight, especially with how good Dwight Grant looked against Carlo Pedrozzoli a few weeks ago. So actually, that win looks pretty impressive. Zach Otto's got some good jiu-jitsu skills. His wrestling is not nothing special, but he's definitely solid on the ground. I'd say he's much more fluid on the ground than on the feet. Alex Morono is he likes throwing first. He's definitely he likes being on the feet. He's another jiu-jitsu blue belt, in the UFC. So that definitely shows on the ground. He shows, a little bit of lack of ground skills, and Otto's going to look to expose that in this fight. That's definitely going to be Otto's best path to victory, or that typical low output decision that he goes for. But this fight will be interesting because everyone's going to use that recency bias of Zach Otto's last fight against Dwight Grant, where it was two counterpunchers staring at each other, not really throwing much. But Alex Morono will throw first, and he will give Otto the opportunity to counter, which Otto is not really bad at. It sounds surprising to say because he's just such a mediocre fighter, but he can do some things well. So, Morono's going to be looking to throw first. He's going to be looking to spam those overhand rights. He kind of just throws wild, strikes a lot of the time. He's definitely hittable. He's definitely, when he is spamming those power shots, he's definitely open to getting countered. He slowed down a lot in round 3 of the fight that I watched him this very recently. Alex Morono, let me see which fight it was. Keenan Song, that's right. He looked really solid against Keenan Song, outstriking him in the first 2 rounds, but definitely slowed down in that last round. He was fighting Jordan Meehan, a guy who's primarily a striker, but actually a very well-rounded mixed martial artist. And Meehan, was able to take down Alex Morono in that fight and hold him down. He was able to get takedowns pretty easily, and he was able to keep him down pretty easily. So, Otto has, I think, a few more paths to victory in this fight. He could, counter punch to a decision, maybe look to test that chin of Morono, or he could try to take this fight on the ground and use his superior grappling skills in this one. So, it's a very close fight, but if the odds are plus 150 for one of the fighters in a close fight, you got to go with that one. So I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm going to pick Zach Otto to win this fight. I don't know what method, but let's go with submission for the hell of it. But it'll probably be decision. Next fight in the bantamweight division, we have Luis Smolka, who is 15-5, taking on Matt Schnell, who is 12-4. The betting line for this one opened up Luis Smolka as the minus 210 favorite, Matt Schnell at plus 160 underdog. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook, 5dimes.eu, we see Luis Smolka minus 125, Matt Schnell plus 105. So a lot of action coming in on Matt Schnell in this one. Almost pushing it to even money. It probably was at even money for some points, but right now, we see Smolka as a small favorite in this one. It's very interesting. I didn't really expect that line movement from that steep line movement coming in Schnell's way, but I guess it is that where the line was set was a little bit too high to start. So I guess I see a little bit of action coming in on Schnell. But like I said, I'm very surprised with where the line sits at now. I think that Smolka should be a pretty decent sized favorite in this one. He's just made his way back to the UFC. He was in the UFC for a while. I think dropped 3 fights in a row. When I believe he admitted he was an alcoholic towards the end of his UFC career. And that was obviously just why he went 0-3, 0-4 actually, losing to Brandon Moreno, Ray Borg, Tim Elliott, and Matheus Nicolau. Not drawing any easy fights for top 15 flyweights for sure. But he went outside the UFC, bounced back with a couple nice wins in 2018, and some lower level promotions, and then got the call back to the UFC for a fight in China against Sumajari, which he looked very good in that fight. He won that fight via armbar. He's Luis Smolka is always going to be looking for subs. He can attack you from guard. He can take your back and get you. He's a really gifted submission grappler. He's not the type of guy who's looking to get on top and win rounds and win with a little bit of ground and pound. He's looking to just finish. He's looking to dive on guillotines or dive on whatever submissions which is it can be a problem sometimes if he's facing a high level grappler and he goes for a low level submission or a low success submission. He could end up paying for that with getting submission or getting submitted or getting knocked out himself. But I don't really think that Schnell poses those threats in this one. I think that Smolka is going to look to clinch up. He really likes clinching. He loves scrambling, going for takedowns, being in those fast-paced exchanges like the flyweights do. These guys are both former flyweights, but were forced to move up to bantamweight because the UFC is closing the flyweight division. But Matt Schnell is a very solid fighter of his own. He's got really nice boxing. He's got fast hands. I'd say he's got pretty solid defense too. He's got good footwork. His striking is actually really, really well. Excuse me, is really good. I read the word well as I said that. So what I was going to say is he doesn't do well against a jab. We saw that. Let's see who Matt Schnell's fight, who he didn't do well against jab. Inoue? Yeah, I think it was Inoue. He lost that fight, he won that fight via split decision to Inoue. I thought he won that fight pretty comfortably, but Inoue was causing Schnell some problems with that jab, just constantly popping it out in his face. But Matt Schnell, we've seen him lose via choke to Tim Elliott, a very skilled grappler. We've seen him get knocked out by Rob Font, a very powerful puncher, and then probably his worst loss is to Hector Sandoval, where he was, a very close fight, back and forth fight, and he was just put on bottom and just TKO'd by some really weak ground and pound. You go back and watch that, and it looked like some pitter patter shots that just put him out. And it was really, really surprising. So honestly, I think that this Schnell's chin is a little weak, I would definitely say. Even though the good thing he has good defense, because I think that will protect him a little bit from his chin being an issue. But I just think he doesn't have good awareness on the ground. If you watch that fight against Tim Elliott, he just looked very uncomfortable. He looked desperate to get up to the feet, and then that's eventually how he got submitted. So and that was a fight where he was facing a very high level submission grappler like Tim Elliott, and he's doing that again in this fight. So look for Matt Schnell to make a small mistake on the feet or on the ground, and Smoke will capitalize, take him down, get that dominant position, maybe give him some ground and pound. He's got solid ground and pound, and either TKO him with ground and pound, or force himself to give up his back or go for a submission. But the pick is going to be Smoke in this one. Honestly, at minus 125, that's a pretty good price. Even though I think that betting favorites in between minus 100 and minus 200 is just a recipe for disaster. For some reason, I just have terrible luck with it. But at the price right now, Smolka is definitely the play. Next fight in the heavyweight division, we have Maurice Green, who is 6-2, taking on Jeff Hughes, who is 10-1. The betting line for this one opened up Jeff Hughes as the favorite at minus 150, Maurice Green as the underdog at plus 110. Since then, a lot of money coming in on Jeff Hughes, pushing him down to minus 225 to Maurice Green at plus 185. So this fight is a rematch. It did happen back in LFA, just less than a year ago, April 27th, 2018, that fight took place. And, I didn't have any luck finding it. It is in LFA. I wasn't able to, find a stream for it. It was a 5-round fight, and Jeff Hughes won that fight. I honestly have no idea how it went or anything like that. I really should have looked into it a little more, considering that the fact that they fought less than a year ago is, probably a pretty easy indicator of how the next fight's going to go. But Matt Hughes, he trains with Stipe out in Cleveland. That's training partners don't get much better than that. He fought a guy, Josh Apelt, something like that. Apelt on the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series, and made pretty quick work of him. He was able to defend Apelt's shots pretty well in that fight, and then was able to stop him later in the first round. I'd say he's got the ability to hit his own takedowns too. I believe he took down Apelt and then ground and pounded him out for the finish in that one. But Hughes is pretty solid all around. He's got solid striking, solid boxing defense. He's pretty solid defensively. He's got good body kicks as well for being a big guy. But Maurice Green, I think that he's definitely the better grappler in this fight. He's very good off his back. He's submitted Cuban Olympic wrestler, what's that guy's name? Michel Batista or something like that. Batista, former Olympic wrestler, took him down, but Green was able to slap on a triangle right away, and was able to end that fight via submission. So the one thing that's worrisome about Maurice Green is that he got blasted and dropped by Juan Espina, who is, typically a grappler. I think that what actually happened in that fight is he was so worried about the takedown, he forgot about the striking of Espino, and then just got absolutely blasted. And then he was tough to finish. He took a lot of shots, and eventually did get finished via submission by Espino, but he did not go out easily. He's definitely got a chin on him. He ate a massive shot and was still not put away. Was actually follow up with some ground and pound too, and it still didn't TKO him. So Maurice has definitely got a chin on him. Green has also got some. He's also got some a power left hand. He's pretty huge on the feet, man. This guy is a massive heavyweight. He's gotten good kicks and good knees too, man. If you watch Maurice Green, I think he fought on the Tuesday Night Contender Series. He absolutely butchered a guy. Let me figure out this poor gentleman's name. Maybe it wasn't the Contender Series. It was actually on the Ultimate Fighter. He knocked out a gentleman named Misalia, just an absolutely vicious knockout. So, I'm slacking a little bit without watching the original first fight of these gentlemen less than a year ago. Honestly, I imagine Hughes was able to, outstrike. Stay technical and outstrike Green on the feet, and then he was able to hit takedowns and stay clear of any submission attempts, and was able to stay on top and win rounds. So don't take my word too clearly on this one, because like I said, I was not able to find the original first fight in LFA, but I don't know. I like to think that Maurice Green had made the necessary adjustments. Like I said, that triangle victory over Batista was very impressive, and his striking against that Masalia guy looked extremely good. So I'm gonna pick Green to make to get the upset in this one, and cash in as that plus 185 dog. So. Moving on to the featherweight division, we have Grant Dawson, who is 12-1, taking on Julian Erosa, who is 22-12. The betting line for this one opened up Dawson as the minus 185 favorite, Erosa as the plus 145 dog. Right now we see Dawson at minus 175, Erosa at plus 155. So two-way action coming in on this fight. Erosa, man, this guy had a pretty bad outing in his last fight. He took on... what's that gentleman's name? He just fucked somebody up on just really recently. Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith absolutely bodied Julian Erosa in their last fight. Erosa just came out there leaning his chin forward. He fought with his face leaning forward, and was just throwing really reckless strike and marching forward, and he absolutely just ate a 1-2 to put him out cold. His striking defense is pretty bad. His chin is pretty bad. He's been knocked out by Teruto Ishihara and Artem Lobov, guys who are notoriously known for not being too hard hitters. Definitely solid strikers, but like I said, it's just not. They're kind of known for their lack of power. But Erosa, he's got nice kicks. He's got he's got a good teep kick he can throw, a good nice front push kick. But just something about the way he fights. He fights a lot more desperate than he did a couple years ago. You watch him in his first UFC run a few years ago, and he's a little more patient, a little more technical. Now he just fights like he's just trying to get out of there as quick as possible and just get that first round knockout. So that that's not going to be good for him in this fight. He has been knocked out once a year for 4 years in a row, has Julian Erosa. So that's a pretty worrisome statistic. His opponent, Grant Dawson, is he looks really solid. He also a Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series guy. He's he's coming out there. He's looking for the takedown. He's not really looking to screw around on the feet too much. He's looking to close that distance. He's got very solid wrestling. He's got good ground and pound, and he's got really good submissions as well too. So. The only area that Dawson is not solid is sometimes he's a little desperate shooting for a takedown. Sometimes he sets his takedowns up nice. He disguises it behind a couple punches. Sometimes he doesn't. So those times where he doesn't is where you're going to look for Erosa to capitalize and possibly land that knockout blow on Dawson. He's going to Dawson, if he comes in for a sloppy double leg, look for Erosa to counter with a knee, flying knee, or a kick. and look to test that chin of Dawson. The only time Dawson has lost in his career was when he was going for a takedown and he was hit with some of those Travis Brown elbows behind the ear, and that put him out in that fight. So one thing Dawson does really nice is he uses his ground and pound to advance position. So he'll hit you with a couple shots and pass your guard, and then he'll hit you with a couple shots, get mount, hit you with a couple shots, and then get your back and sub you. So he looks really solid on the ground, looks a really good wrestler, and Orosa's ground game, I'd say, is a little bit unknown. We don't really see him on the ground too much. I'm sure he has been in his career, but I personally don't think I've ever seen him on the ground. So it's a little bit of an unknown, but I just, with just how much of a flake Orosa is and how low skilled he is, I just going to trust Dawson. I'm trusting the guy with the momentum coming behind him who's looked really, really solid on the ground. And I think that Dawson will get this one done via submission. So the pick is going to be Dawson. Next fight in the women's bantamweight division, we have Yana Kunitskaya, who is 11-4, taking on Marion Reneau, who is 9-4-1. The betting line for this one opened up Kunitskaya as the -150 favorite, Reneau at +110. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook, 5dimes.eu. Right now we see Kunitskaya at -175, Reneau at +155. So more action coming in Kunitskaya's way. I believe rightfully so in this one. Actually, no, I'm going to disagree with that. Where the line sets out right now is a little bit too high. I mean, this is, I'd say a medium level skill women's MMA fight. Kunitskaya, she's well-rounded, I'd say. She just doesn't do anything too spectacular. She's got decent striking, she's got decent takedowns, decent top control, but there's just no area of where she excels. I guess her strength would be her grappling. She likes taking you down, getting on top and winning rounds that way. She also can grinding you out, leaning you against the fence, going for that clinch, and just making it a grinding type of fight. But Kunitskaya, her striking is it's super sloppy, man. She just doesn't throw anything with crisp technique. It's just all spammed out there. Reneau, I'm not saying she's the most technical girl ever, but she definitely throws with a lot more ill intent on the feet. She's got a pretty solid right hand, man. She floors bitches with that right hand. Sarah McMahon, for instance, McMahon was able to take her down and smash Reneau in round 1. Then Reneau came back in round 2 and rocked McCann with a punch, and then eventually was triangled her in that second round. I'll give Reneau this. That triangle was lucky, man. She got taken down, by Olympic level wrestler in McCann, and it was just a really explosive takedown. And when they landed, Reneau's leg happened to be on top of McMahon's shoulders, just in the perfect triangle position. And, McMahon just didn't recognize it, did not assess it as a threat, and then just let herself sit too long in that triangle position, where Reneau was able to lock up that triangle and get that finish after, getting 10-8'd in round 1. So that was a really impressive victory. Unfortunately, since then, Reneau took on Kat Zingano, was just taken down in that fight relentlessly. Didn't really have much takedown defense, didn't really have much get up in that fight, and Zingano was just able to dictate that fight wherever it went. I guess Reneau probably got the better of the striking exchanges, honestly, but I believe Zingano won the fight 30-27. So Reneau is gonna have to. Her just takedown defense is just bad, so she just is unable to keep distance. It's just not in her nature to keep fights at distance. She just wings punches and ends up really close. So Kunitskaya is not the most dominant wrestler, not the strongest girl, not the most heavy top pressure, not the most lethal submission artist. So I think that Reneau will be safe enough on the ground to make this fight competitive. I think that, Kunitskaya will get takedowns and will end up on top, but I don't think that Kunitskaya will be able to keep her down. I think that if this fight ends up on the feet, I think that Reneau will be able to land those couple hard right hands and, rock Kunitskaya. But this is just a really close fight. It's I don't have a strong lean. I wouldn't be confident picking either woman. But the fact that it's a close fight and one of the women is plus 155, I gotta side with the dog in this one. So I'm gonna go with Marion Renaud to get it done, and probably by decision in this one. Next fight, I believe my favorite matchup on the card. Actually, I mean, we got a couple solid matchups. I don't think we've had one yet. Chanel Smolka is pretty good, but this fight really stuck out to me as one of the best on the card. We got Anthony Rocco Martin, who is 15-4, taking on Sergio Moraes, who is 14-3-1. The betting line for this one opened up Tony Martin as the minus 210 favorite to Moraes at plus 160. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook, 5dimes.eu, we see Martin at minus 220, Moraes at plus 180. So interesting where the betting line is set. Even though I like Tony Martin in this fight, I think that plus 180 next to Moraes' name is, it's tempting. This is just it's not too close of a fight. I believe that Tony Martin should definitely be the favorite. It's just that Moraes has a path to victory. He definitely does. So we'll start things off with Martin. Martin has just looked, he's been in the UFC for a while, and he just looks like a different fighter the past couple fights. We saw him come out against Ryan LaFleur, look incredible. Was able to stuff shots, was able to get back to his feet, was able to threaten with submissions, was able to do punishment on the feet, and then eventually got the knockout victory over Ryan LaFleur. He also had a solid decision victory over Kita Nakamura. And, most recently picking up that Anaconda choke over Jake Matthews. Arguably his most impressive win to date. A fight he was losing. I think he was losing 2-0 on a couple people's scorecards. I think I remember the fight being 1-1. But, that fight, Tony Martin did win the fight. He just didn't fight too smart. He was really content to have wild striking exchanges with Jake Matthews on the feet in that fight, and he definitely got rocked by some of his shots. That's why he lost those first two rounds, because I think that Matthews was landing the better shots. It was, I believe, in Australia, and Matthews being an Australian, it could also have not been an Australian. I could be talking shit. No, it was in Australia. So that might have had a little bit of a favorite into it, but good thing Martin ended up getting it finished in the third round. Martin has just got wicked submissions, man. He's a black belt on the ground. We've seen him defend chokes. He defended very well against Olivier Aubin-Mercier. The only times we've seen him really outclassed, we've seen him, he lost to Machine Magomedov, and was tapped out by Leo Santos and Beneil Dariush. So even though he's got wicked submissions, he's black belt on the ground, he does lose to those super high level black belts like Dariush and Santos, which is where this fight gets interesting, because Sergio Moraes is a high level black belt. He's competed, he's a world champion in jiu-jitsu, and he's also showed really good jiu-jitsu skills in MMA. So a great example of that is his last fight against Ben Saunders. Ben Saunders, this is why I said this plus 180 price tag is intriguing, because Ben Saunders, an American black belt, very solid submission guy, has a lot of submissions in the UFC. He took on Sergio Moraes, and he ended up in a jiu-jitsu battle. He ended up in a guard passing fight where it was just a grueling, grinding type of guard passing, high level jiu-jitsu type of stuff. Where Rocco Martin shines is mixing up the striking with the takedown defense. He'll threaten with the submission, or he'll be taken down and he'll use a submission or use a Kimura or something like that to get back to his feet. He's very good with that type of stuff. But if it comes to a guard passing fight with Sergio Moraes, man, I favor Moraes in that type of fight. But that's not the end all be all of this fight. It's going to be very hard for Moraes to get Martin on his back. Moraes does not have good takedowns. He really pulls guard a lot. And, even when he pulls guard, he, it doesn't look too successful with it. We saw him against Tim Means. We saw him against, Zach Otto, both guys where he was able to get them down on the canvas, whether it was from takedowns or pulling guard, and both of those gentlemen were able to get back to their feet, and he was not able to, get off any grappling. So, like I said, it's not, once Moraes gets the fight to the floor, it's not end all be all, but I think that, I think that the grappling exchanges will definitely be favored by Moraes. The striking exchanges are massively, did you hear that? Massively favored by Tony Martin in this one. Moraes' striking is garbage. He's got a pretty weak shin. He was knocked out by Kamaru Usman, the only person I think Usman has knocked out in the UFC. He's got terrible defense, terrible footwork. He's got, sloppy boxing. He wings punches. He's open for counters. It's a damn shame. You see that in that fight against Tim Means, a fight that Moraes was in Brazil, his home country, Brazil. He was, winging nasty punches, not the good type of nasty. Just terrible, sloppy punches. The commentators were, oh, Moraes hurt him. You slow down those exchanges, and every one of those punches bounced off of Tim Means' arms, or Tim Means was evaded the shots. Moraes landed maybe 5 hard punches the whole fight, and you would have think that he was dominating the fight by the way the commentators judged it. It was just a really weird fight. Towards the end of the fight, Paul Felder started saying, I don't know, I think these shots are bouncing off of Means' arms. I was like, dude, they were doing that the entire fight. They were referencing it the entire time. They're like, he had a lot of success in round 1. I think this fight is 1-1. I'm like, dude, you are talking out of your ass right now, getting this totally distorted view of this fight. Who knows? Maybe the judges hurt him, because the judges somehow gave that fight a split decision victory to Sergio Moraes. I think Tim Means won that fight 3-0. I think that was one of the most egregious robberies of the past couple years in MMA. So, Tim Means, won that fight, no doubt about it. So, this fight's going to be very interesting. If the fight stays on the floor, if Moraes is not able to get Martin on his back, I think Martin wins. If Martin is on his back, I think that Moraes, turns this into that guard passing type battle. Passes his guard and submits him. You watch that fight with Tony Martin versus Leonardo Santos. Leonardo Santos, high-level black belt. Martin won the first round of that fight. The second round, he got taken down, ended up in that guard passing type of scenario, and Santos blew through his guard, mounted him, and choked him in 30 seconds. It was an impressive victory. But that was the old Martin. That was lightweight Martin from a couple years ago. He took that fight on short notice. He took it in Brazil. It's going to be a whole different story this time. He's much improved. He's got a better team, better camp, better coaches at a higher weight class. And, he's got the sideburns now, and he's fucking Kayla Harrison now. So, the dude's got the swagger, and I'm picking my man Tony Sideburns Martin to get the knockout victory over Sergio Moraes in this one. Next fight in the middleweight division, moving up to the main card, we have Tim Boetsch, who is 21-12, taking on Omari Akhmedov, who is 17-4-1. The betting line for this one opened up Akhmedov as the favorite at -230. Wow. Boetsch as the +170 underdog. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook, 5dimes.eu, we see Akhmedov at -135, Boetsch at +115. So a lot of money coming in on Boetsch's way. I definitely don't disagree with it. I think where the line is set at now is a little more accurate to, -230 for Akhmedov. That's crazy. But this is a close fight. We have two former welterweights, both moved up to middleweight in this one. Akhmedov is a short, stocky guy. He's, very muscular. He's a wrestler. And Boetsch is, a longer, stockier, thicker guy. Way less athletic. Boetsch is just a weird type of fighter, man. He's been in the UFC for a while. He's, had some good wins, had some bad wins for sure. He's, one thing that is very worrisome about this fight is on interviews, Boetsch is talking about how he just started a new business, and he started discussing with his family and friends about when it's time to retire. And he talked about, the new business is going great. He, is thinking about just investing all of his time into that. Well, if you're thinking about that shit as you're about to get in, a fist fight with Omari Akhmedov, that is bad, bad news. I'm not saying it's the end-all, be-all of this fight. I'm not saying Boch has no chance, because he certainly does. But that's just not what you want to hear coming from Boch. Akhmedov is coming off of a little bit of a long layoff in this one. I think he had a little bit of a USADA problem. Who knows, though? So his fight with Marvin Vettori, that was his most recent fight. That was all the way back in December of 2017. He gassed quick in that fight. He had early success. He 10-8'd Vettori in the first round for sure. He just throws power in every strike, man. This guy wants to knock your head off with every strike. And despite that, he doesn't really have too many knockouts, I don't think. Let me check this just to make sure I'm not completely making this up. But that gas tank of Omari is definitely his biggest problem. Yeah, not very many knockouts. Definitely, I don't think he has any in the UFC. Yeah, no, he has a TKO via injury, but no knockouts. I know he has one over back in 2013. So, he's fought some very stiff competition. He actually has a split decision win over Abdul Razak Hassan, which looks pretty good. That dude's been tearing up the division as of late. So, Akhmedov, he was very tough. In that Vettori fight, he gassed out and was getting beat up really bad by Vettori, but was able to hold off, not get finished, and stick it out to the scorecards, where that fight was eventually ruled a draw. Akhmedov can definitely get caught with some submissions in the grappling exchanges. He is a wrestler. Throughout his career, the wrestlers are not too acclimated to the submissions. So sometimes when he goes for the submissions, he leaves himself a little bit open for, sometimes when he goes for the takedowns, he leaves himself open for submissions. We saw that against Marvin Vettori. He got caught in a couple close subs in that fight, but was, eventually not submitted. But, getting over to Tim Boch, he's been submitted by a couple high-level black belts in his most recent fights, Antonio Carlos Jr. and Jacare. He's tough to take down, and he's tough to knock out. He's got a really good chin. He's, tough as nails. You can go back and watch that Yushin Okami fight from years ago, one of the greatest comebacks in UFC history, where he was just absorbing a ton of punishment, but just refused to quit and eventually got the knockout in the third round. But that's practically a different fighter at this point. I mean, Boch, that was 10 years ago or something like that. Right now, he throws some wild power strikes. He throws a lot of wild hooks, man. He'll just tuck his chin and throw bombs without much technique. He's got some good kicks, good body kicks, good leg kicks, but the one problem that I think is going to be the biggest deciding factor in this fight is leg kicks. Omari Akhmedov whips leg kicks, man. You watch that Marvin Vettori fight, he hit Vettori with some thunderous leg kicks. And Tim Boch does not do well with checking leg kicks at all. So, we saw that in the Antonio Carlos Jr. fight. He was getting chewed up by leg kicks. The commentators even said, that's something that the Junior's camp definitely studied, because Boch has notoriously not defended leg kicks. So, look for that one to be a factor in this one. Look for, Omari to be blasting that leg and, throwing those hard shots. And, like I said, even though Boch is hard to knock out, Akhmedov throws with some serious intent. So I gotta side with the guy who's, I think, more devoted to fighting at this time. He's coming off that suspension. He's looking to make a statement, getting back in the middleweight division. Boch, he's got one foot out the door. I'm not saying a win would completely surprise me, because he has, pulled out a lot of victories as the underdog with his back against the fence before. But, I just, hearing that stuff about him, having a lot else going on the horizon, and hearing him thinking about retirement before this fight is just, something you really don't want to hear. So the pick is going to be Akhmedov to get this one done. Honestly, I'm going to go by knockout early. So moving on to the lightweight division, we have Beneil Dariush, who is 15-4-1, taking on Drew Dober, who is 20-8. The betting line for this one opened up Dariush as the favorite at -185, Dober as the +145 dog. We see Dariush now at our affiliated sportsbook, 5dimes.eu. We see Dariush -200, Dober up to +170 in this one. So I'm going to agree with the line movement, a little more action coming in on Dariush's way. Dober is, I wouldn't say this is a striker versus grappler matchup, but, Dober is, much more comfortable on the feet. I'd say that, he's not terrible on the ground. He can hit his own takedowns. He can, remain in top position. But, I don't think his sub defense is that great, and I don't think his awareness is too solid on the ground. That is something he's going to have to be super, super careful about. He's taking on a high-level black belt in Beneil Dariush. Yeah, you just saw that fight against Aubin Mercier with Dober. He was just, he was very reckless on the ground. He tried exploding out of positions, and OAM just didn't let him get up and was able to get mount and was able to, choke him out. He's also lost via submission to Efrain Escudero. Lost to Leandro Silva via submission. Was, out-grappled by Nick Hine. So the Drew Dober's Achilles heel has definitely been the grappling and the submissions in his past. And like I said, taking on a extremely high-level black belt in Beneil Dariush. Beneil Dariush in his last fight was taking on a world jiu-jitsu world champion in Thiago Moises, and I honestly was picking Moises in that fight. I was saying before that fight, there's going to be a difference between a world champion black belt and, a typical black belt, one who's in MMA. And in that fight, I realized I was totally wrong, and there is a difference, and it's an MMA black belt. A guy who knows how to use his black belt integrated with MMA is much, much more dangerous than a jiu-jitsu world champion black belt. And, you just saw Dariush in that one just completely outclass Thiago Moises in that fight, mostly with grappling, which is clinching him up, kneeing him, taking him down, getting position, actually took his back, went for a couple, submission attempts in this one. Dariush is I say this a lot, one of the best jiu-jitsu guys in the UFC, but I'd say he's probably the most underrated jiu-jitsu guy in the UFC. His grappling is just so high level, man. It's a beauty to watch. Dariush, he's also got some striking as well. He's got a solid jab. He's got solid body kick. He's a pretty nasty southpaw. He's been working with Rafael Cordero for the past couple years, and that's really strengthened his striking. His Dariush's striking defense is not always his best. He definitely got caught by Alex Hernandez, knocked out last year, and got flying kneed by Edson Barboza, looking for the takedown in that fight, a fight that he was winning. But something of note, both of Beneil Dariush has fought in March of the past 2 years, and he lost both those fights by knockout. While looking pretty good the rest of the year. So, man, maybe March isn't Beneil Dariush's month, but no, all jokes aside, Dober is, his striking is good. He's very aggressive. The only thing is he just eats a lot of punches. You saw that in the Frank Camacho fight. He's very content to eat a couple to land a couple. So that's not always the best thing, especially if you're fighting a very technical guy who fights behind the jab, and Dariush, who could be jabbing you, and those leg kicks are definitely going to come into play in this one, because Dober does not check leg kicks very much. Saw that in the OAM fight. OAM was whipping leg kicks, and Dober couldn't really do much about it. So, you look for Dariush to be constantly pressing forward. I think that Dariush will actually be really competitive on the feet, even though I can give a slight edge to Dober on the feet, and Dariush would just be country miles ahead of Drew Dober on the ground. Even though Dober is solid on the ground. So, this fight, I think that Dariush will win it, probably via decision, probably with, a mixture of, clinching and, working for takedowns, top control, maybe get in the back, looking for submissions. I think that he'll win this one by decision. And, minus 200 favorite, if playing favorites are your thing, that I think that Dariush is actually a pretty safe favorite in this one. Moving on to the heavyweight division, we have the return of Ben Rothwell, who is 36-10, taking on Blagoy Ivanov, who is 16-2. The betting line for this one opened up Ben Rothwell as the minus 110 underdog to Ivanov as the minus 130 favorite. So both fighters open up as, minus money in this one. Looking over at our affiliated sportsbook 5Dimes, we see Ivanov at minus 125, Rothwell at plus 105. I believe Ivanov actually sunk down to minus 130 at some points, but right now hovering around minus 125. Interesting, very interesting. Like I said, the return of Ben Rothwell in this one, coming off a 3-year layoff, mostly due to USADA, I think. I don't really, I guess it was a doping suspension. I'm not sure if it was, taken supplement or whatever. I mean, the dude had a total dad bod gut, so, maybe his steroids were just, a little bit undercover, but who knows? Who knows with USADA at all? So, Rothwell, really, really interesting style of fighting. He kind of stands there and likes to lure you in. He puts his hands up in the air and just kind of floats his hands just in a really awkward manner. Not really like too solid defensive. He's just kind of floating his hands out there in front of his face. Just, it's almost like he's luring you into doing something stupid. He's definitely looking to counterpunch. Sometimes he'll blitz forward with his own combination, but most of the time he's looking to counter. So if there's a minute of the fight, he'll look to counter for 50 seconds, and then if nothing happened in that last 50 seconds, then he'll blitz you for the last 10 seconds and throw a bunch of punches. So his style is a little bit unpredictable. Sometimes he'll lean back and, try to draw you into that counter. Sometimes he'll blitz you. So, Rothwell has also got nasty chokes, man. We've seen him tap out some high-level grapplers. Like Josh Barnett is a high-level black belt. He's, submitted Dean Lister, one of the best submission grapplers, heavyweight submission grapplers of all time. Barnett has submitted him, and Rothwell was able to choke out Barnett in the UFC with that front choke, man. You shoot for a takedown on Rothwell, he will snatch your neck. Very, very nasty chokes from Ben Rothwell in this one, but I don't think he's got to be too worried about the shots in this one. He's taking on Blagoy Ivanov, who is primarily a boxer. I don't think I've ever seen him shoot for a takedown. I'm going to be honest, I've seen little footage of Ivanov at all, besides his fight with Junior Dos Santos, which was just, I would call it a low-intensity boxing match. That fight was, I think, almost contested entirely on the feet, and it was just, JDS looking a little more technical, a little quicker, and, just throwing a little more volume in that fight. Ivanov had a really underwhelming debut coming over from World Series of Fighting. He's definitely looking to counterpunch. He puts his back against the cage. He's got, I guess, decent technique, but man, sometimes I think he wings punches. Sometimes I think his defense is a little bit suspect, and I don't think he really has much power for being a heavyweight, which he's gonna need to get the respect of Rothwell in this one. So man, and Ivanov is a short, stocky guy. Rothwell is a tall, lanky, long guy. I mean, he's not lanky. He's very thick. He's a huge, wide guy, but I think Rothwell will probably have like something like 8 inches of reach or something like that in this fight. Let's pull up the statistics on this one, because for a guy, Ivanov, who's going to need to rely on his technical striking, he's going to be at a massive disadvantage with how long Rothwell is in this one. Yep, 7-inch reach advantage for Rothwell in this one. I think that's going to play huge factors. I think Rothwell is going to be throwing that leg kick of his that he likes a lot, and looking to pick Ivanov apart at the feet. I think he's going to be hungry for that win coming off of that USADA. He hasn't gotten paid in 3 years. He's going to be looking to come back to the UFC, collect that win bonus, collect maybe a knockout of the night, and get back in the cage soon. So I think that honestly Rothwell has a good chance at finishing Ivanov in this one, even though Ivanov is tough to finish. He's got solid defense, he's got a good chin. I don't know, man. But Rothwell has just a crazy way of finishing people sometime, and I think that's what he's going to do in this fight. So the pick is going to be Rothwell to come back in fashion and get the knockout win versus Ivanov, possibly even a choke. The guy's got can finish you from the ground or the feet. So the pick is going to be Rothwell. The next fight takes place in the welterweight division, where we have Nico Price, who is 12-2, taking on Tim Means, who is 28-10-1. The betting line for this one opened up Tim Means as the minus 115 underdog. Nico Price is the minus 125 favorite. Holy shit. First time seeing that opening line for me. Tim Means right now minus 210 on 5 dimes. Price at plus 175. So massive line movement coming in on Tim Means. Somehow he opened the underdog in this one. It could be a line error or something like that. But, judging by the sound of it, I do favor Tim Means in this fight. Tim Means has got really solid boxing. Not solid boxing. He's got good boxing. He's got a solid ground game. His boxing defense is good. He's got high outputs. He throws a lot of jabs. He, throws a lot of leg kicks. He's got good ground and pound, man. It's hard to find some things that Tim Means do wrong. He's a very, very well-rounded fighter. As I mentioned earlier, his, most recent loss coming to Sergio Moraes was a highway robbery. I believe he won that fight 3-0 versus Sergio Moraes. He was, I believe, dropped and finished by Alex Oliveira sometime around last year. I don't even really remember that fight. Also lost a split decision to Bilal Muhammad. But, Tim Means, he's just a very, very talented fighter. I think his boxing would definitely be his best attribute. He, has got some of the best technical boxing in the UFC, honestly. Nico Price is, he's a heavy hitter as well. He's got solid boxing. He throws with power a lot more. The biggest difference between their striking is, Means just thinks about defense so much more. Price does not, man. Price will blitz you with, crazy powerful combinations and just not care about defense at all. You saw that in the Abdul Razak Hassan fight where he just got absolutely brutally finished in that fight. In a firefight, he seemed like he hit Al Hassan with some hard shots, but just got too overzealous, too excited about the fact he might have hurt his opponent and then was eventually finished himself. But Nico Price is he's also got a pretty solid ground game. I think their ground games will honestly kind of cancel each other out. They both got solid submissions, both got some decent wrestling as well. These guys are pretty evenly matched. I just think that's where it's going to come down to is just the technique of Means on the feet will be enough to pick Price apart throughout these striking exchanges. The one thing about Price, man, is on the ground he finds a way, man. Sometimes he can be sloppy going for a takedown. He just finds a way to reverse position or finds a way to threaten with a sub or get some ground and pound. We saw in his last fight with Randy Brown, man, he knocked him out from the bottom with hammer fists from the guard. One of the most unconventional, weirdest knockouts we've ever seen, but it was effective, and he's got that power, man. He's got power in his hands, and even if he's hammer fisting you from the bottom on the ground, he could still knock you out, which a lot of us didn't even know was possible. Very, very rare type of KO that Price scored in his last fight. So I don't think that Means will be looking for any offensive wrestling in this one. I think if anyone's initiating the offensive grappling in this one, it will be Price. He will probably not like the way that things are going on the feet, and he'll look for a different route on the ground, which honestly, I think he will have more success with. I think that Price, if he tries to, throw power blitz shots on the feet without much defense and he's going to get picked apart by Means, I don't know if he'll get necessarily finished because Means doesn't have an insane amount of power. I think he'll most likely just get picked apart to a decision. But, Price could be, looking for that takedown if he doesn't like things on the feet, and maybe he can, get on top and win rounds. But I don't know, man. Tim Means is really solid on the ground. I really think that he will be okay if the fight gets to the ground. He'll be solid defensively on the ground, and I think he'll excel on the feet in this fight. So maybe Price rocks Means with some, heavy shot and a crazy exchange or something like that. But otherwise, I think that Means will win this fight via decision, just, outstriking Price on the feet, using that that jab, that high output, spamming leg kicks, and, just winning this fight with landing the harder shots on the feet. So the pick is going to be Tim Dirty Bird Means. Next fight is also in the welterweight division. We have Ilitsu Zaleski dos Santos, who is 20-5, taking on Curtis Millender, who is 17-3. The betting line for this one opened up Millender as the minus 125 favorite, Zaleski dos Santos as the minus 115 underdog, but pretty much even money. in this matchup, man. A great opening line in this one. I can't disagree with it one bit. These guys are just so evenly matched. They're almost mirrors of one another. The biggest difference between the two is, I say, Zaleski just has a much more solid ground game. Melender's ground game is atrocious. Not over exaggerating one bit. He has no takedown defense. He's got no get up skills. He's got no jiu-jitsu skills. However, he knows this. He doesn't try to do too much. So if he gets taken down, he's very good at staying, defensive, not wasting energy, not really trying to get up to his feet. That's a good and a bad thing. We saw him get taken down against Max Griffin in the first round of their fight. He, like I said, stayed tight defensively, didn't give up any submissions, and didn't really try to get up to his feet, just conserve energy. And then he was able to, stuff takedowns and win the striking exchanges of rounds 2 and 3 and win that decision. We saw him get taken down by C.R. Badarizara in his most recent fight. Same thing, conserve energy, stay tight defensively, and was able to, ride out round 2, maybe losing that round, and then, get right back up in round 3 with still having that speed, still having that power. So let's get on to where these guys shine, and that is their striking, man. Both of these guys are powerful, flashy, technical, fast strikers. I think Melender is actually going to be the faster striker in there. Zaleski throws with a little more style. He likes throwing more spins, more flying techniques, more unorthodox techniques. His nickname is Capoeira, comes from a Capoeira background, the crazy Brazilian striking art. Melender is, from a more kickboxing background where he's just straight technical and fast, man. His jabs are lightning fast. His right hand is super fast. He's, a very really good orthodox striker. He's got good body kicks. He throws that nasty oblique kick that John Jones throws. He can throw head kicks. He can throw nasty spinning kicks. He's got good cardio, Curtis Melender does. We saw in the third round, even after he got taken down by C.R. Badarizara and was throwing his punches with some ill intent the entire fight, he still had that speed and he still had that accuracy and power in the third round to rock C.R. with his shots, and he just carries that cardio very well. I'd say Zaleski, on the other hand, is a little bit more questionable with the cardio. We actually really haven't seen him go to the decision as much as Melender has. Melender only has 3 fights in the UFC so far. He was able to finish Thiago Alves with some knees back last September, I want to say. Maybe 2 Septembers ago. Who knows? And he picked up that win against Max Griffin, and that he made his debut in February. So 3 wins in 2018, a very impressive debuting year for Curtis Melender. But Zaleski dos Santos also had a very impressive 2018, picking up 2 flashy knockouts. Sean Strickland was able to knock him out with a spinning hook kick, and then knocked out Luigi Vendramini with a flying knee later that year, man. So, like I said, these guys are streaking right now. They're both on hot win streaks. They both are, extremely technical, powerful strikers. It's going to be a bitch to pick who is going to win this fight. Honestly, I still really haven't picked a side on it. I think that even how great I haven't mentioned Zaleski's striking attributes. So he is also very, like I said, very similar to Melender. He's got great striking. He's got good kicks. He throws well. I think he throws with a little more power than Melender. Melender's more speed. Zaleski's a little more power. Both of these gentlemen's problems is they can get taken down while going for those flashy attacks. So I think it will cancel out in this fight because I think neither of them are really looking to grapple. Maybe Zaleski is looking to grapple if he doesn't like how things are going on the feet. I don't think Melender has really much offensive grappling, abilities to him. Zaleski, on the other hand, I think has the better jiu-jitsu and the better wrestling skills. So if he chooses to get this fight to the floor, I think that he will be able to do that. And I think that that's something you will have to, look out for, because Zaleski knows he's, a great, powerful striker. He loves striking. He loves getting in brawls. But he also knows he's also a very smart fighter, and he is, could see that Melender has that weakness on the ground, that huge, glaring weakness on the ground, and he might choose to expose it. So, I think I'm gonna have to favor Zaleski a little bit because I think that he can win this fight standing, or he can win this fight on the ground. I think that both of these gentlemen are hittable. I think that neither of them have perfect defense. Both of them have gotten tagged in their recent fights, but they both use their great knowledge of the distance control, and they both use their output, the popping out jabs or popping out kicks constantly as their main striking defense. So this fight is going to be super, super interesting. This fight could end at either moment for either gentleman. Landing that heavy high kick or landing those heavy punches and putting each other out, or it could be a really competitive striking decision. Zaleski could mix it up and look to make it a grappling fight, in which he would probably succeed and win the decision that way. Or they could bang it out on the feet. Make it a really competitive split decision type of fight. I think it has the best chance of playing out like that, it being a 15-minute war going back and forth. Either it could go either way, but like I said, because Zaleski has that grappling in his back pocket if he chooses to do so, that's why I gotta favor him in this one. So is he the favorite or is he the dog in this one? He's plus 100 right now. So yeah, I mean, I don't think I'll bet on this one because it's just too close to call. I think I'll sit back and just enjoy the these guys' technique and how great they are at striking. So this one's gonna be a great fight. It possibly could be the best matchup on the card. And moving on to the main event of the evening, we have Derek the Black Beast Lewis, who is 21-6, taking on Junior Dos Santos, who is 20-5. The betting line for this one opened up Dos Santos as the -145 favorite to Derek Lewis as the +105 dog. Right now, we see Dos Santos as the -200 favorite, Lewis up to +170, so a lot of money coming in on Junior Dos Santos' way. I would say I agree with it. However, I would never bet against against Derek Lewis. I just don't. There's something weird about it. I bet on Alex Volkov. I did the tape. Knew Volkov was a bad matchup. Knew that he was going to pick Black Beast apart at the feet, which Junior Dos Santos should do on paper too. But Derek Lewis is a freaky motherfucker, man. He has been losing so many fights, and he just pulls that knockout out of his ass. He's had those round 3 finishes so many times. He was plus 800 live or something like that versus Alex Volkov, and he still knocked him out in the last 30 seconds of their fight, man. He's just a freak of nature. He just throws with, pure power. He's got, good ground and pound. He's got solid cardio, He doesn't really throw much output, but he's he selects his shots, and, he throws power with every single strike. Lewis's ground game is definitely his weakness. We've seen him, taken down before. Sometimes his technique can also be a little bit of a problem too when he's facing guys who are popping jabs in your face and leg kicking you and teep kicking you. He has problems with that. But what he did against Volkov, against Tybura, but he just finds a way to close that distance right when you think you have him beat. Right when you think you won 14 to 15 minutes and you're on your way to winning a decision, he explodes in with some power and he knocks you out. So that's what I think can happen in this fight. Even though Junior Dos Santos is the more technical striker, he's got the more technical boxing, the better defense, I'd say even better cardio, the better output. Lewis is still dangerous at every second of this fight. Junior Dos Santos actually might have been losing that fight against Tai Tuivasa, but then he was able to clip Tuivasa in the second round and then pound him out for the TKO win in that one. So Junior Dos Santos can fight a couple different ways. If he wants to, he can stand and bang and try to get you out of there quick like he did against Tuivasa, or he can fight smart, conservative, technical like he did against Ivanov, like he did against Rothwell, like he's done against a lot of guys. So, Dos Santos is the much more, agile, the much better mixed martial artist. I'd say he's a little bit past his prime. He's been fighting for a long time. He's had his ups and downs. I mean, right now he's definitely on his ups. He's looked good in his past couple fights. But Derek Lewis, I think is he's I'd say he's closer to the athletic prime of his career. He's always having those back problems, but still, I think he's still super dangerous. If I have to go with a pick, I would lean Junior Dos Santos in this one, but value on the betting line is definitely all over the Black Beast at plus 170. So, like I said, gun to my head, pick who's going to win. I'm going to go with Junior Dos Santos, but the value is definitely on Lewis, and I think this one should be pretty exciting fight. So that is going to do it for the Wichita, Kansas breakdown. Hell of a fight to have UFC, the first time in Kansas, I'm sure, for the UFC. But we had a 13-fight card. The fight's, going to be pretty good. I think that look out for the welterweight division, man. I think all three of the closest matchups in this fight on this fight card are in the welterweight division: Rocco Martin and Marias, Nico Price and Tim Means, and Zaleski and Melender. So this one's going to be great. Also, I think Smoka Schnell has really great potential written all over it. Looking forward to see Grant Dawson making his UFC debut, and looking forward to see the comeback of Ben Rothwell. So we got a pretty solid card going down this Saturday. Kicks off at 5 p.m. Like I said, very interesting start time. Make note of that. I think the main card will probably start at 8, maybe 9. Who knows? So with that being said, we're just going to quickly recap the UFC 235 pay-per-view that went down this past weekend. And, this was a very, very eventful pay-per-view. It left you with a lot of conversations, a lot of discussion to be had afterward. I kind of had the urge to, sit down in front of the mic and, record my thoughts the couple days before or the couple days after the pay-per-view. But I'm kind of glad I let it brew for a while, let, all of the events that happened, let them soak in my memory for a little bit, and see how I really feel about these things. So we'll get into the more juicy events that happened in the fight and towards the later of the card for sure. But starting things off, Hannah Cifers coming through as that underdog, predicted on the program last week. We knew Cifers was a huge live dog at over 2-1. Her points handicap line, her decision, I hit all of it. Hannah Cifers, coming through as one of my biggest wins in a while. I love that girl. She really fought hard in this one. I believe she won round 1 and 3 in this fight, and fought hard, looked good. Boxing looked sharp. Power looked pretty good. Next fight, we had Macy Chiasson run through Gina Manze, TKOing her around 2 minutes into that fight. Just a nasty blitzkrieg from Chiasson, throwing some heavy shots at Manze, eventually knocking her out pretty brutally. As brutal as it gets for a women's MMA fight, honestly. Next fight, Charles Bird shot in for a takedown on Edmund Shabazian when Shabazian hit him with some nasty elbows to the back of the head and TKO'd him in just 38 seconds. Really impressive performance from the 21-year-old Shabazian in that one, and Bird, man, really shit the bed in that one. Diego Sanchez, the veteran, picking up the TKO win, his first stoppage win in a decade or something like that over Mickey Gall. Another huge underdog performance we predicted on the program last week. Points handicapped, inside the distance, money line, all of it. Diego Sanchez, coming through with another big win. We knew that Gall was an overhyped prospect. We knew that Sanchez had great sub defense. We knew that he just beat a young lanky grappler in his last fight, and he did the exact same thing. Got on top, ran down that ground and pound, and got the stoppage. It was amazing seeing the veteran pick up his first finish in a decade, and we saw it happen so clearly, and it came to fruition. So that's what we do tape for. Diego Sanchez and Hannah Cifers coming through as big 2-1 underdogs in that. I got Diego Sanchez at 285. One of the highest money lines I've hit in a while. So Cody Stamann, Alejandro Perez defeating him via decision. Really underwhelming fight, honestly. I think I was cooking during this fight, so, I didn't really get too much of a solid feel from it. I just, Perez really just didn't look, he always looked a little lackadaisical. Sometimes he'll push the pace and look to brawl. Sometimes he'll look really, lackluster, and that's what he did tonight, or last Saturday night. Johnny Walker came out there, flying knee Misha Serkinov and put him away 36 seconds into this fight, man. Just incredible performance from Walker, that he just continues to pull out these crazy victories with that crazy power in the first minute or two of the fight. All three of his UFC victories coming by way of knockout in the first, 2 minutes. So, everyone's looking to see what's next for Johnny Walker, but my man's hurt his shoulder celebrating his post-fight victory. Something you never want to see, but at least it didn't come during the fight. He tried to do the worm and he dislocated his shoulder. So we'll have to see how bad the shoulder is. I heard that it's he I think he has to do 4 weeks of rehab or something like that. So not the worst injury, but it's definitely an injury that he'll have to deal with before he fights next. But next fight we had Zabit Magomedsharipov defeat Jeremy Stephens. I was going on about this fight. I probably talked about it for 6 or 7 minutes last week, but honestly, I think the fight was a little underwhelming. I don't think Zabit looked as sharp as he did in his previous fights. It's probably because his level of competition was skyrocketed this fight. Jeremy Stephens definitely the best opponent he's ever fought, and it definitely showed. Stephens was able to steal one of the rounds and make it a close, competitive fight. And Zabit, looked a little more humane in this fight. I don't really have a too crystal clear memory of how the fight went down, but like I said, I was, Stephens, almost won this fight. Honestly, I think that the people were talking about a nut shot in round one that fucked up the momentum of the fight. Stephens was had the momentum going, and then Zabit hit him with a kick to the groin. But I don't really see it as being a problem. Zabit, the kick hit the leg and then glanced up and hit the cup, so it was clearly unintentional from Zabit. And like to see him fight against Yair Rodriguez next. Next fight, the best fight on the card by far, I think. Pedro Munhoz versus Cody Garbrandt. Pedro Munhoz knocked out Cody Garbrandt 4 minutes and 51 seconds into this fight. Just a crazy barn burner of a fight. Started off a little slow, started off feeling each other out for the first 3 minutes, and then there was a little bit of a clash of heads, a headbutt. And after that, both guys decided to start swinging, man. They both hurt each other for periods of time. Munhoz hurt Cody first, had Cody knocked down, or had him down. Cody bounced back to his feet and threw a flying knee and started winging punches at Munhoz and maybe even hurt Munhoz, had Munhoz backing up for a little bit. It looked like Garbrandt was desperate. He got hit with that headbutt and he was desperately looking for, a knockout. He was winging shots while Munhoz looked like he knew he was in a brawl, but he was calculated. He knew he knew what was coming. He knew how to to be a little bit defensive. He knew he had to couldn't throw defense completely to the wind. He still had to stay solid, stay technical, and pick the right shots, which he did, man. Picking that right hand, he hit Cody with 2 hard right hands that floored Cody. Eventually following up with some ground and pound, scoring the TKO victory from Munhoz, man. Cody Garbrandt getting caught with the exact same punch. He loads up on his own right hand, leaves himself wide open for a counter right hand and gets blasted. He got blasted by Dillashaw in the first fight. In the second round, he got blasted in the first round of their last fight, and then in the first round of the Munhoz fight, he gets blasted with that same exact punch. It's where do you go from here? Cody Garbrandt, former champion, but he gets caught in the exact same manner without making any improvements. Getting knocked out 3 fights in a row. Anybody who is his friend, his coach, his anything should be ashamed. The fact that you let a guy get caught, that's like getting rear naked choked 3 times in a row. How many times is it gonna take for you to learn some solid defense? And it seems like it's just not really in Cody's nature. It seems like he had that one outlier. He looked good coming up in the UFC, knocking out Marcus Brimage and a couple guys, Thomas Almeida. But then he had that one outlier performance where he looked like a calm, cool, calculated striker against Dominic Cruz. Was, fought 5 rounds, fought smart, was knocking Cruz down. And, that's like I said, it seems like an outlier performance. After that, losing by knockout in the same fashion 3 fights in a row. Pretty much, inexcusable for a championship level fighter. If he hasn't fixed it after he got knocked out twice in a row, he's not fucking fixing it, man. I hate to break it to you that will be Cody Garbrandt's Achilles heel for the rest of his career, his boxing defense and his chin. It's pretty much irreversible at this point. And you would think that it's oh no, he 3 in a row. He has to learn now. Dude, if he didn't learn after he got knocked out in the same manner twice, he ain't fucking learning after the 4th time or after the 3rd time. So Cody Garbrandt, man, I'd say they give him a real easy tune-up fight. Luke Sanders, Brian Kelleher, somebody like that. But honestly, man, his ceiling is set. I don't expect much more out from the rest of his career. I think he'll probably lose his next fight. If they give him anybody in the top 15, Rob Font, any of those guys, they will eat Cody alive. I think you should give Cody a really easy fight like Sergio Pettis or, like I said, Kelleher. Luke Sanders, get his feet back in the water, protect your asset of Cody, the flashy guy with 1 million followers with all the cool tattoos. You got to protect that. So, moving on, next fight, we had Willie Tsang defeat Tisha Torres. A very impressive performance from her. Looked very solid on the feet, solid on the ground. Winning that victory, defeating Tisha Torres by decision. 30-27 on 2 cards. Jessica Andrade couldn't even do that to Tisha Torres. So the only person who could do that was Joanna. So Willie Tsang is certainly legit, and we should be looking out for her in the near future. Next fight, we had Ben Askren defeat Robbie Lawler via a bulldog choke in the 3 minutes and 20 seconds of the first round. Crazy fight. This one started. The fight started. Askren looking to close the distance, go for that takedown, and Robbie Lawler picks him up and slams him on his head with like a WWE suplex type thing. I thought Ben Askren was out. Robbie Lawler landed some nasty follow-up ground and pound. I really thought Askren's UFC career was over before it started. And he was able to hold on to Robbie, get back to his feet, get a takedown of his own, and start dictating the pace of his fight. After he was almost finished, a few minutes later, he showed incredible grit, incredible heart, and incredible chin. The fact that he was able to withstand all that, and then end up starting to win the round after that. Eventually ended up in a bulldog choke type position, which is a really weird type of choke, not too common in MMA. Robbie Lawler's hand was on Ben Askren's shoulder, and then his hand drops down like it goes totally limp. That was the indicator right there. Herb Dean, everybody was watching. Joe Rogan said he's out. I was screaming he's out. People thought Lawler was out. So Herb Dean shakes Robbie Lawler's arm. And after that, Robbie Lawler seems to he fights the arm. His arm is there. He gives a thumbs up, but Herb is he saw the arm drop. He doesn't know what's going on. He thinks Robbie is out. He stops the fight. It was definitely a bad stoppage. Robbie, his arm was definitely resisting. Herb was touching his arm, and he was, pulling. He was, he could definitely tell that Robbie was there if you rewatch the clip. But the way that Robbie Lawler's arm dropped, man, it looked like he was out. If Herb Dean would have stopped it the second after his arm hit the canvas, it would have been a good stoppage. But the fact that he shook his arm and it looked like Robbie Lawler was there for a second made it a bad stoppage. This was an interesting fight, because Askren, the fight could have been stopped when Askren was getting ground and pounded. The fight could have been stopped when Lawler's hand dropped, but neither happened. It was stopped at a really unfortunate time. A lot of controversy around the fight. Lawler, protested for a few minutes, or for a few seconds, and then, kind of just accepted the fact, was really apologetic to Herb. Herb looked really confused in the cage. He looked really upset with himself. He looked like he didn't really know what happened after the fact. He was, pissed off. He was like, oh man, I can't believe I did this. He definitely didn't have any, he didn't have any dog in the fight. He wasn't, rooting for Ben Askren to win. He just, saw that arm go limp and, was put in a difficult spot. What I think happened, I think Askren went out. I think Lawler went out. I think Askren, has got that insane wrestling squeeze, been wrestling for 20 years type squeeze. He squeezed Lawler. Lawler's hand dropped. He went out for a second. And right when he did, I think Askren started to loosen up the choke. Right when Herb was in his face, right when Herb was touching the arm, he definitely loosened up that grip. And Lawler was out for I think a second. He was squeezing. His hand dropped. If Askren would have kept squeezing as hard as he could for 2 more seconds, Lawler would have been out cold. But I think he saw that hand drop, and then he kind of loosened up the grip, and that allowed Robbie to not go fully unconscious. But I think Lawler was out. I think he went out for a few seconds, and then Like I said, Askren loosened up the grip, and then Lawler regained consciousness before he went fully out cold. So, unfortunate stoppage. I don't really see much of a point in a rematch. I think that there are better fights for both gentlemen to have, and I think the UFC should not pursue a rematch. So, moving on to the welterweight title fight, Kamaru Usman, new champion, outclassing Tyron Woodley. 50-44 on two judges' scorecards, 50-45 on one judge's scorecards. Let me tell you something. There were 2-8, 10-8 rounds in this fight, no doubt. I think it was the second and the fourth round. Kamaru Usman just completely beat the brakes off Tyron Woodley on them. He put the pace on and he was taking him down. He mounted him. He grapevined him. He smothered Tyron Woodley. He took the champ down. He smothered him. He outpaced him. He outputted him. He beat him in all aspects of MMA. It was a very impressive performance from Kamaru Usman. Really sold me on the legitimacy of Kamaru Usman as a martial artist. He had that plus 170 price tag, something like that, next to his name. It seems crazy thinking back on it because it was a really favorable matchup for him. He likes pushing people against the cage, winning fights against the cage. Tyron Woodley has a tendency to put his back against the cage. Counter strike or lure people into a low output type of fight, or try to stuff shots against the cage like he did against Damian Maia. Wasn't able to do any of that. Usman was able to dictate where this fight was taking place, put the cardio on Woodley. Woodley looked, something was wrong. I'm not going to say Woodley was off. I don't think anything was wrong with Woodley. I don't think Woodley really respected Usman. I think he was going to go in there and blast Usman. It wasn't going to be too much of a challenge. When you saw Usman blast that takedown on Woodley, and Tyron Woodley, one of the best fight IQs in mixed martial arts, tried to jump guillotine on Kamaru Usman, you knew something was off. I knew something was off. I was talking about it with my friends live on Discord. I said, man, him jumping guillotine is the dumbest thing that Woodley has done in years in the cage. That was a bad sign because he really didn't have any moments of success. Woodley. He was dominated from bell to bell, 25 minutes of domination, getting his belt taken, getting mounted, getting grapevined, getting embarrassed. It was a really humiliating performance, I'd say, from Woodley. No shame against it. I mean, Usman, it really showed he's got some of the best takedowns, best pressure, best cardio, best top pressure of anybody in the UFC right now. Like, really, really special post-fight interview from Kamaru Usman. Like I said, was not too sold on the guy. Didn't really like his attitude or whatnot. But, he brought his daughter in the cage. He had his daughter with him. He said, baby, I want you to remember this moment for the rest of your life. And that was, really special. We see a lot of, special moments between fighters and their family. But I don't think I've ever seen, the fighter holding his daughter in his arms and making a point and saying, this is, I did this for you. I want you to look back on this, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now and show this to, your kids, grandkids, and show, your dad, grandfather winning that world championship, beating the champion, beating the undisputed incumbent champion, the guy who defended his belt for multiple times, and Usman went out there and absolutely demolished him in one of the best title fight performances in UFC history. So, like I said, I'm totally sold on Usman now. I would definitely respect the guy. Can't wait. Tyron Woodley's not getting a rematch, 100%. Tyron Woodley, never been a UFC type guy. The UFC and him never really got along. He never really had the most exciting fights. He never really sold too many pay-per-view buys. He always had a little bit of a feud with Dana White. There is zero fucking chance he gets a rematch at the title, especially the fact that he got beat 25 minutes to 0. There was not a second of this fight that Tyron Woodley won. So, it's pretty hard to make a rematch in that one. When there's a fast knockout, it's a quick, the guys had back and forth like Cody TJ or CJ or TJ Cejudo. I can see a reason for a rematch. But when a guy gets beat, outclassed, 25 minutes bell to bell, there's no need for a rematch. It's going to be a tough road for Woodley to get back to the title, but we got a bright future ahead at welterweight. Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington is going to be a hell of a matchup. Two of the best wrestlers, the best cardios, the best pressure from anybody we see in the UFC are going to be going at one another. It's going to be bombs away, and we all know. A lot of animosity building between those two gentlemen. It's going to be a great one. That's going to be enough said about that one. We're going to move on to the main event. John Jones, the greatest mixed martial artist of all time, defeated Anthony Smith 48-44. That's not a scorecard you see too much. John Jones did win this the fight 5-0. Maybe one was a 10-8, but he landed an illegal knee to Anthony Smith in round 4. Interesting. John Jones threw, I think, a soccer kick that was really close to landing, and he threw an illegal knee to a downed opponent where he was deducted 2 points for, intentionally throwing an illegal strike. I don't think it was a dirty move. I don't think he really disliked, Anthony. I think that he got caught up in the moment and, threw a strike, an illegal strike. But, he fought safe. It looked like in the first round, it looked like Jones was swinging for the fences, trying to, get Smith out of there. And he's like, you know what, fuck this. I'm just going to fight smart, fight, like I said, smart, technical for 25 minutes and just outclass this guy, which is exactly what he did. Smith, was known as a powerful, heavy hitter who blitzes forward. He didn't do that for a second in this fight. Jones just shut him down, kept him at distance, was using that push, was using his kicks, his jab. Everything looked on point from John Jones as usual. And, John Jones is going to be active this year. He wants to be active, fight a bunch of times. Let's get another fight going right away. Thiago Santos is clearly the next guy in line, coming off of 3 knockouts in a row since moving up to light heavyweight. He is, I really like that matchup, honestly. We'll talk about it, of course, when the fight is made. I think it seems to be next. Dana White wants to fight next. The only thing that would stop it is, Jones versus Cormier or Jones versus Lesnar at heavyweight or something like that. So I think that Jones versus Santos is next, and I really can't wait for that fight. But really solid pay-per-view of UFC 235. I feel like I've been talking a mile a minute for an hour and a half now, so that's definitely going to conclude the program. We previewed, analyzed, and predicted the UFC Wichita card going down this Saturday night, and we analyzed and recapped the UFC 235 pay-per-view. So that is going to do it for this edition of Martian Mixed Martial Arts. This has been episode 52 of Martian MMA, and I will see you guys next week before UFC London. Peace.